we can always reach for more every step of the way because we're human and we need to. We're fallen creatures and we need to always continue reaching for more. And I think that's what I've laid out is how we do that in this kind of final stage of perpetual success building, this healthy lifestyle, this healthy mindset of growth, is that's how we reach for more. Hello everyone, welcome back. My name's Devan. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope that you are doing fantastic today. I am sorry about the late recording. I'll just get that out of the way. I was in Oklahoma City for a training and I thought that I was going to be able to sit down and record one. I was like, wow, we're going to actually have a different setting, but that was not the case. And so I was left with like zero Wi-Fi, and my laptop that I brought with wanted to update because it just wasn't working otherwise. And so anyway, I didn't get to record, so I'm recording this week. I hope that you all can forgive me and show me kindness for this late episode. Now, getting back to the regularly scheduled program, today we're going to be talking about building on your successes, building on what you have developed so far in the last two episodes. If you haven't watched them, go check them out. But we've been talking about building a vision, right? Episode 1 was how to identify a problem and start to build a path forward. Episode 2 of this little series that I did is about how we can really build a map around this identified problem. And this third one is, and this last one of this little series, is how we can continue to build on this success. Maybe once we feel like we've solidified our path, we've got a good grip on things, and we want to just keep rolling with all the positive things, because that's a really important part. When you have all this success, when you have, I'm not going to say all of this success necessarily, but when you have success in what you're trying to accomplish, whether that's, I use the example of seed oils, whether it's changing, your cooking oil and the oil you ingest on general, and looking at ingredients and being more health conscious. Maybe that's what you've set as your goal. Great. That's what we want. We want you to continue to succeed. How do you do that? What happens? Are you doing the right thing? These are all questions you're going to ask yourself along the way. Am I crazy? Am I nuts? Am I just pretending that I care about this? I don't know. Those are great questions that I hope that we can dive a little further into today. Because, what we want to do when we're creating a better life for ourselves, when we're trying to, reach for more. And speaking of reaching for more, if you haven't gotten a chance yet, I have a newsletter that I release every week, or mostly every week, unless you have bad Wi-Fi like I did. And so I release it every week I'm shooting for Monday. Let me know down in the comments too, because I'm working on a new, just like a little title change from reaching more and then something about the subject to reaching more Mondays, reaching for more on Mondays, reaching for more. I really don't know. I'm just trying to figure this out, and so I'd appreciate if you'd let me know what you think about the name change. However, what you get when you sign up for the newsletter is, first off, the reading list of the great books of the Western world. That's just in my mind, a pivotal understanding of our tradition, of our Western culture, and our history of who we are in the West, right? You're probably watching this in some westernized country, right? And if you're not, I invite you to check out our tradition and let me know what books are important in your other traditions, whether you're from a more African tradition or maybe an Asian tradition or Eastern. I would love to know. That would be awesome if we can build this cross-tradition, conversation and try to understand one another from a fresh perspective, a young perspective maybe. And so that would be pretty cool. But not only do you get that reading list, you also get just a brief reflection of myself, some things I've read this past week, and those reflections I have on that book. I usually share a good quote with that as well. And then I also talk about something I learned. Now that might be from something I read, that might be from an article that I was reading, or from a podcast that I listen to. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so there's a lot of references there. This past week was a podcast reference. And then to wrap it up, I just share something useful, just a resource, a tool, a website, whatever it is, right? I share a resource for you just that week that's helped me, or that I'm interested in, or that I'm looking into, and just try to, again, create the conversation. So I'd appreciate that if you check that out in the link below. Other than that, today we are going to, be talking about building on your successes, how to continue that. Because what we want to do is we want to take the effortful to the effortless. We want to cement our habits in just solid rock. We don't want them to move, because we've done all this work of identifying the problem. We've built our map. We've thought through this. We've built the anti-vision, right? What happens when we don't do this thing? We've done all that. And so now what we're looking to do is we're looking to cement these habits. And it's important to remember that cementing habits takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day. And if you've watched my video on habits that specifically come from William James, the founder of American psychology, really the first big psychologist in America himself, and founder of a school of philosophy, pragmatism, really great tips on building habits. Some of the best I've heard in really long time. Rivals even, I think, James Clear, who founded Atomic Habits. So it's a great episode if you go check it out. But really what we want to do is we want to get these habits just automatic, to do what habits do, right? You don't even notice them. And so, because what's happening when you're adjusting, when you're building out this map, this vision, and we're going for the long term now because we've decided that this is something worth having for the long haul, and trying to just incorporate this into who we are. You have to know that your neuronal framework, your neurons in your brain, the little electrical impulses that fire back and forth between the different connections in your brain, right? They fire back and forth, they send messages. Well, the way they communicate is through pattern. And so when you, let's say I have an empty cup here, when you pick up a cup, your brain is recalling how to pick up a cup. It's really it's really simple, but it's really cool that your brain remembers that, because otherwise we'd have to relearn how to do everything all the time, and that'd be really annoying, really inconvenient, and we probably wouldn't have things like, I don't know, cups, for example, to pick up, right? It's so foundational, and yeah, they change as we adapt. As we grow, they grow, and they change. And sometimes, and this is the thing, especially with bad habits, when we've led a life that maybe, it's not even necessarily that we're not proud of, but just a life that we haven't maybe been intentional with, because there's a certain rule that comes with habit building, and really anything in general. You can zoom it out as far as you want. You either choose your habits, you either choose what you're doing, or it gets chosen for you. Now, I don't know about you, I really like choosing for myself. Like to think I'm a pretty independent guy, and so I really want to choose for myself whatever it is I'm doing. And so I've got to choose, and I've got to make that conscious effort, that effortful decision at first, so that my habit in the future is exactly what I want it to. And now that begins with education and all that awesome stuff that I talked about in that last video. But really what we got to know is that it takes time to change. We have to adjust. In therapy, there's a diagnosis. It's kind of a umbrella diagnosis, if you don't know, and if you aren't familiar with like the DSM-5, the big, the big purple book, is kind of how I always tell people. But it's the umbrella category for a lot of things that people come into counseling for is adjustment disorder, because sometimes our chaos that we feel inside is because of an adjustment. And we're going to talk about that a little later, but just know that it takes time. It's sometimes a shock to your body when you try to rein yourself in and you try to go, nope, we're not going that way anymore. We're heading this way. It takes time, and know that the more effort you put in the beginning, the more intention, the more thoughtfulness that you pour into this vision, whether it's being more health conscious or it's starting a business. The more effort you put in, it'll pay out because you've set it up right. You've done all the thinking, and now you can be confident in your decisions and your actions that come from that you're ready to go. And so to go from effortful to effortless, you've got to know that it takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? To use that old phrase, and that you're going to benefit from compounding interest. But the biggest factor with compounding interest is time. Another thing that's really important with continuing to build on this success, build on these maps that we've made, is identity consolidation. We have to consolidate who we are. We have to now be someone who does X, Y, or Z. We have to now be that, right? We don't just get to say, yeah, I do this. No, I am this. We have to change that language a little bit. And that can be a really difficult thing because what you're doing is you're restringing and resewing together your conscious narrative. And if you're not familiar with what your conscious narrative is, it's exactly what it sounds. It's the narrative you tell yourself when you do something, right? Whenever you make a mistake, you get in an argument, what do you tell yourself? I'm a failure, or it's their fault, right? Maybe if we're a little narcissistic. This conscious narrative brings in a lot of core beliefs into our everyday life. And so we've got to be conscious of that, right? And if we're going to change it. And so we now have to move that identity, not from we do this or we are dabbling in that, but we are this. So we are a healthy person. I am healthy. I make healthy choices. I don't eat things that aren't good for me because things that aren't good for me are not food. And so, perfect. Or I am a business owner. I am an entrepreneur. I don't know, I feel like that's a curse word now, entrepreneur. But I am X, Y, or Z. Whatever it is for you, you have to be able to change that because, well, that's how you get to where you want to go. You end up being that Warren Buffett didn't just become Warren Buffett overnight, right? It was years. It was years of building his business, of making effortful decisions, of risking things, and telling himself that, maybe I'm not such a failure. But it's important to know that our conscious narrative matters, what we tell ourselves matters, and that's going to change when we start to move into our identity. We become whatever it is we're trying to do because, well, that's how we keep up that habit, right? Because if you are someone who does X, Y, or Z, you just do it automatically. Your brain doesn't even have to stop to say, are we sure? Are you good with this? We just do it. It's a beautiful thing about our brain. And so, because it helps you find kind of figure out who you are, right? It reminds you of who you are, your identity, and your identity also constitutes simultaneously where you're going, right? I'm a healthy person, and so I'm going to continue to make healthy decisions. I am a business owner, and so I'm going to continue to develop. I'm going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue to foster and improve my product. That's what that's going to do. And so it helps us know who we are and where you're going. I'm reminded of a quick story that the president of my university loved to say all the time. He had this class that he'd stand up in front of all the freshmen and he'd talk for, about an hour and a half once a week. And it was a really cool experience because we got to learn a lot, and you also got to sit in front of the president, and it was like, oh wow, this is pretty unique. And so a story he told about that exact phrase, who are you and where are you going? There was a rabbi that was walking along a road to Damascus, and this was in the time of the Romans, and so he came upon a Roman checkpoint and a Roman fortress, and at the wall the Roman soldier called down, and the rabbi, he had been so busy and deep in thought and prayer that he didn't even bother to look up, and he ran straight into the gate. And so this Roman soldier called down to him, who are you and where are you going? And he looked up at the Roman soldier and said, how much do they pay you? And the Roman soldier was a little perplexed. And he said, well, they pay me 7 denarii a month. And the rabbi said, I'll pay you 3 times that if you follow me and ask me that every morning. Because what the rabbi's getting at and what this story gets at is that it's such an important question that we have to stop and ask ourselves, who are we and where are we going? To remind ourselves of what is our identity, and to know that if our identity is not where we want it to be, and I know identity is a very big buzzword right now, if our identity is not in line with where we want to go, or if we're in some sort of chaotic bubble, if we have some existential stress, if we have, negative feelings about ourselves, that our identity then, something we believe about ourselves and who we are, and subsequently where we're going, is not aligned with flourishing. And our bodies and our minds know that, right? When we adopt a stance that isn't good, we get a gut feeling. Sometimes we get anxious, we get sweaty. When we try to, I don't know if you've ever done this, I certainly have, imagine, where you've extended past your argument and your knowledge base, and then you start to say things that aren't true at all, or things that at least you don't know are true, and you get in over your head very quickly, and so you get flushed and you get frustrated, and then you get a little bit more emotional and you might get more elevated, and it's just not a great place to be. And all that time your body's telling you to shut up, right? You're breathing a little heavier, you're getting sweaty, your face is flushed, and you're like, oh man, I just want to scram, but you don't. And you keep, because you're really stubborn like me maybe, and you keep doing it, and that's okay, right? That's okay, we're all human. But the important thing is that what we're doing is we're figuring out, and we're always kind of questioning that. And as long as we're in line with our identity, as long as we've figured that out, who we are, what are we as a human, all that stuff, specifically in this case, who are we as, a healthy person? What does that mean? Then we can figure out where we're going, and we won't have that anxiety. We won't have that. We'll be very in line with what we have on the inside. And it's important too, because this helps us trust our vision, and it helps you know that what you're doing is good. And Friedrich Nietzsche, the famous and maybe notorious philosopher that I know I've mentioned before and done videos on, just paints an excellent picture of what the good is. And he says that there's nothing better than what is good, and good is having some ability and using it to create, in that Italian Renaissance sense. And so it's simple, right? What is good? Are we doing good? Are we creating? Are we having our ability and using it to create? Because that's the whole goal, right? In our path towards success is to do good. At least I hope it is. Otherwise, you're very Mephistophelian, and it's like, okay, that's not great. And maybe we should talk about that. You should work through your childhood issues. That's important. But really what that's telling me is that we have a purpose, and that purpose, and Nietzsche goes on to say that the Italian Renaissance of idea of virtue is very moral free. It's morally free, he says, and that really there's no better thing for us to do than to use our ability to create, whether it's creating healthy habits, whether it's creating a business, whether it's creating a podcast, whatever it is, right? That we're using our ability to create, and they're creating for the case of creation, because that's our ultimate goal, which I think is just a beautiful picture for us, and a beautiful motivation for us too, to kind of lean in towards. Another thing too, though, that I think maybe doesn't get talked about often enough is imposter syndrome. And well, maybe it does get talked about enough, but I think that when we're looking towards, because we think that we should be building all this great vision, we should be starting all these new things, we're creating, right? Why would we feel like an imposter? Well, I think there's 3 important things to consider when you're encountering imposter syndrome. The first of those being, are you being as genuine as you could be? I know that when I first started this, and even to a degree now, I feel like I'm being a little bit of an imposter, like I'm acting. But what I'm trying to do, and the reason that I'm trying to edit videos the way I am, or I'm trying to post things the way that I do, is that I'm trying to be as true to myself and as genuine to who I am as I can be. Because I think that itself, when I take and bring my outward facade and bring it as close to who I am as possible, what I show the world is when that is as close to who I am, I think that we automatically reduce that imposter syndrome. That just goes away. With not forever, but it definitely reduces it. It helps it out. And if that's not the case, if you are pretty convinced that you're being as genuine as possible, which might challenge you a little bit on that and say that maybe you could be more genuine. I don't know. But I think that what you can do then is go on to the second little check mark that I think is really important to examine, is that, do you lack competence in an area? Are you unsure of what you're actually doing and you're trying to act as you are someone who knows what they're doing? Which, again, I've done that. I know that I have definitely done that in all sorts of areas, and some of it's you're just figuring it out, so you're kind of just new. But otherwise, I mean, there have been a couple occasions where you extend past yourself and you don't really know where you're actually going, because you don't know. Because I think that imposter syndrome really boils down to dichotomy of competence versus confidence, right? We want to feel confident, right? That gets us in line. But before we can feel confident, we have to have competence in that area. We have to know, and again, have identity consolidation. We have to know who we are, because imposter syndrome is kind of that antithesis of identity consolidation. And then the third thing, that if you are competent in your area, maybe you're an even expert in your area, but you still feel a bit of this imposter syndrome, do you need more time to adjust? Because what you're doing is genuinely new and you're just figuring it out. Because that's okay. And number 3 is where we kind of dip into a bit of that delusion that we can kind of get, that negative self-talk, that really scrupulous attitude that we can develop when we're trying new things and that we're really passionate about it and we want to do it well. We can get very scrupulous about that, and we can really run ourselves down and feel like an imposter, that we're imposing. And I know I've all 3 of these stages I've definitely felt along the way. And so imposter syndrome is normal, but it's not helpful. And so we want to change that a little bit. And the way that we beat imposter syndrome is identity consolidation. And then the last bit here, as I kind of wrap it up, is revision. You have to be willing to go back to the drawing board, because we would be very foolish to talk about all this vision stuff, all of this even anti-vision stuff. It's great. It's great to talk about that. It's great to identify your problems. But maybe that was just your first draft. Maybe that was just what you had initially thought. And now that you've, again, allowed that time to pass, time's the really cool factor, you've allowed the time to pass, and now you're like, oh, wait, I was totally wrong on that. That's not how you do that. And instead of getting yourself kind of in a rut and all mixed up, what you can do is just go back to the drawing board. Go back to that vision board, start to finish. What is your goal? Because you're a human being, I'm a human being, and goals change, situations change, and we genuinely just have different feelings about things over time. And so you'd be like, I would probably be a garbage man, I think. I don't know. If I stuck with my first vision of what I wanted as a career, right? And I'm sure you all have really funny stories that you would be, funny characters that you would be, if you also stuck with your first vision of a career, or, kind of all of these different things that are significant to us. You'd have a very different life than what you have now. And so it's important that we go back and revise, and try to narrow down on who it is and where we're going, or who we are and where we're going. And because otherwise we're just lost and we're wandering in a desert, and we don't want to do that. That's not helpful. It's not fun out in the desert. There's no water, there's no shade. Nobody likes it. And so in order to avoid wandering in a desert, we got to revise. And, good, because that means that you don't have it all down. You don't have everything that you could ever picture perfect the first time. Because I think it's a very easy trap to get into, and I think that we'd be lacking if we didn't go and re-examine our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors in one area or in all areas. And that revision takes place over time. You don't always have to be in a state of revision. You don't always have to be questioning if what you're doing is the right thing, but it is important that what you're doing is occasionally, on occasion, going back to the drawing board. Don't stay there, because you can procrastinate, right? You can productively procrastinate and be thinking you're very helpful to yourself when you're really not. You're just spinning your wheels in the mud, and really it's a form of, well, to keep it family friendly, self-gratification, right? We want to just make ourselves feel good by all this planning. But if you're not doing anything, if you're not saying that, what your goals are and living those out, again, going back to the Freud phrase, he does not believe that does not live according to his belief. And it's such a simple phrase, but I think it's something that should cause us all pause and say, oh man, yeah, I could change things up a little bit here, because, well, we can always improve. We can always reach for more. We can always, and that's why I named my newsletter what it is. Well, my whole publication what it is, because we can always reach for more every step of the way, because we're human and we need to. We're fallen creatures, and we need to always continue reaching for more. And I think that's what I've laid out is how we do that in this kind of final stage of perpetual success building, this healthy lifestyle, this healthy mindset of growth, is that's how we reach for more. So I hope that you liked this video. I hope that I didn't bore you to death. If I did, let me know, and I can try to boost things up a little bit. But I appreciate you sticking around if you did, and if not, that's okay too. But I think I would appreciate to know if any of you made it to the end of the video. Leave a comment down below with one goal, right? How about that? With one goal that you have for this kind of fall, this kind of end of season time. I'd love to know what you have on your mind. All right. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you all next time.